Spin your passion into a business with Shopify and break sales records with the world's best converting checkout. Let's hear that one more time. The world's best converting checkout. Shopify's legendary checkout makes it easier for customers to shop on your website, across social media, and everywhere in between. Now that's music to your ears. Any way you spin it, you can be a smash hit with Shopify. Start your $1 a month trial today at shopify.com/records.
Hello there, writers and book lovers. If you enjoy listening to the show and want to help me keep creating awesome content, I have a Patreon page where you can support the podcast and get exclusive access to ad-free episodes, live chats, and the Discord server. By becoming a patron, you'll be helping me cover the costs of producing the show and making it even better. So if you can, please head over to the Patreon page and join the community of Right and Wrong fans who are helping to take the show to the next level. Thank you for listening and for your support. Let's get back to it.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
It's the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am very excited to be joined by a best-selling author whose brand new novel, The Dog of the North, has just been longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It's Elizabeth McKenzie. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's start off with what is the very current and exciting thing that's happening. The Dog of the North, your brand new novel. It's been out for just over a week now.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us all a bit about it?
Sure. It's about a woman in her 30s named Penny who has recently left a failed marriage, and she has set out to take care of some family members that are having calamities of their own, and she basically falls into a series of misadventures as she sort of moves forward with her life. The whole book takes place just a few weeks, so it's very tightly focused on her sort of moment-to-moment life during those weeks and every little mishap that befalls her. And
very excited to be longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. How's that feel?
Well, it feels great. I mean, I feel so, I'm just amazed just to be nominated. And, my last book also was nominated. And yeah, it's a wonderful prize. And yeah, it's terrific.
Your last book was the Portable Veblen.
That's right.
Which was a bestseller. And as you mentioned, that one even made the shortlist back in 2016.
It did,
right?
yeah. I got to come to London and it was very exciting.
Yeah. Does it add a certain sort of pressure, that kind of critical acclaim to the next things that you write?
I think it does. I mean, there's this lovely temporary feeling of, elation and, I think that it, it does make you feel like the stakes have been raised and that what you have to write next has to be important to live up to that. But then in the end, basically you go back to being yourself in your office, in your pajamas and, yeah. Yeah.
It's easy to remember that you're human again when you're sitting in your pajamas in your office.
Exactly.
So is this the third or the fourth book novel you've published?
It's my third novel. My first book was actually a collection of stories. So my fourth book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the sort of launch period now.
Yes.
Do they feel different now that you've done this sort of 3-4 times? Does it feel different, the kind of launch period, the way that the sort of promo and hype is generated for each one?
Yeah. I mean, I think I know what to expect, and I still find it shocking that, people want to talk to me about the book or, that I have to talk about myself or my process. And that doesn't come naturally to me because it takes me a while to work up to the point of the launch. I don't examine it while I'm writing, what I'm doing so much. And then I look back and sort of piece together what happened during the process.
Right. Okay. So it's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, doing lots of promotion and stuff like this, I guess.
Well, I've gotten used to it and I
Yeah.
enjoy it, but it surprised me how much that had to be done when I first first published a book.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because I think, and a lot of writing as an activity does seem like a sort of, in many ways, a solitary thing. It's a very personal thing. As you say, you're sitting at your desk by yourself. So having to then go and like speak to lots of people and share it with lots of people, whilst exciting, also quite sort of daunting at the same time. I understand.
Exactly. It's true. Yeah.
Like when you ask, authors will talk about, well, authors, writers, and like readers will talk about books, other people's books, literally endlessly. And, you know, as soon as you ask them about the book that they're writing, they'll freeze up and not know what to say.
Yes. I can relate to that, certainly.
So dialing it back even further from your previous kind of experiences with publishing books, how old were you when you first sort of started writing, when you first sort of got the sort of bug for writing?
I think I've always had it, because I remember writing limericks and poems that were, humorous when I was a child. Went into journalism in high school, worked on the paper, had a column.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I was writing poetry. I was really enamored of the beat poets, and Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti and so on. And then switched to fiction, I think maybe perhaps senior year. I took a class where they assigned each person in the class a book they thought would be useful for that particular person. And they assigned me Henderson the Rain King by Saul Bellow. And I was just, I was delighted by the book. I was, the effervescence of his voice, his vocabulary, the music in the prose. So that became my goal, to write a novel after that. Okay.
So you've kind of been on this path for a long time now.
I have, I'm afraid.
That's great. It's great to kind of have direction from such a early stage in your life and kind of know where you're heading.
That's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, I did think about other things sort of in a fantastical way. I wanted to be a spy or, things like that. But yeah, this was all I ever, it was the only thing I ever thought I was any halfway decent at, so.
Oh, okay. Well, the beauty of being an author is that you can live your spy fantasy in your own novels.
Yes, exactly.
So at what point, this is sort of, so after, was it the first time you sort of wrote a novel or collected stories? Was that sort of after college?
Yes. I think, it wasn't immediately after. I worked in publishing in the years after I left college. I was trying to write during that time, writing short stories and so forth. But it took me a while to, achieve the style that I was after and be able to carry a story forward. I tried writing. I think what really helped me over the bump from stories to novels was having a screenwriting partner in LA, and we wrote a number of scripts together. And that helped me, learn how to extend a story, and sort of the rising action and falling action of a story became sort of internalized at that point.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So
did you write sort of screenplays together?
Yes, we did.
Oh, I've looked into that. It's a very different discipline from writing prose, like a novel.
Very different, yeah. But something about the structure helped me write my first novel, because I conceived of it. It was MacGregor Tells the World, and I conceived of it in 3 acts, the way you do with a screenplay. And but in the novel, it's 3 months. It's represented by 3 months, and but of course, all the prose and the texture of the prose is very different.
And so that was your first novel that was published?
Yes, it was.
The World.
Yes.
And that was the novel. That was the novel was that when you first started submitting to agents and publishers and things?
Yes, I did. In fact, it actually made the rounds through publishers with a different title. I was in my early 30s, and I was thrilled to have gotten an agent, and she was unable to sell it in that version. So I went back, I gave up on that one and wrote another novel. It also did not get anywhere. And then I rewrote McGregor Tells the World, and, finally, maybe 10 years later, it was published. So it was a long road.
Yeah. I mean, publishing is definitely a marathon and not a sprint, I think.
Yes. Yes.
For a lot of the time. That's so interesting that you came back to it, though, and decided to rewrite it. Was that after sort of lots of discussion between you and your agent?
In a way, I mean, at that point I had a different agent.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And but some time had gone by, and I could see things about the novel that I wasn't satisfied with. Mm-hmm. And so, and I changed it from first person to third person, and the voice kind of matured, and it became a better novel. So
that's a big change.
Yeah.
Going from first to third.
Yeah.
That must have taken a lot of editing back and forth.
It did. Yeah. It took me longer than anything else I've ever written. So for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But in your books, you do, I don't know whether it's deliberate or not, but there is definitely a sort of many years spaced out between your books. You're not the sort of author that's putting out a new book every year or even every 2 years. How long do you tend to work on a draft before you sort of start sharing it with maybe your agent or your editors?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on the book. I mean, with the Portable Veblen, I was sharing it with the agent I had at the time over the course of several years, because that book took me about 7 years to write. It involved a lot of research, and sort of synthesizing and distilling that research. So it became part of me before I could really write about it. And I was getting feedback from her, but essentially that agent didn't care for the book. So I switched agents and found one that did like it. And then it was, very smooth sailing at that point with her. With the new book, with The Dog of the North, I wrote it very quickly, just in a little over a year. So
oh, wow.
There wasn't that much conferring to do. It just I was just basically done by the time I was ready to show it.
Oh, okay. And was it something that you had been thinking about for a long time, or was it really just a sort of spontaneous thing where you just suddenly knew what the story was going to be and you just got it down?
O'Reilly! You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I had notes. I had sketched out some scenes involving some of the characters, again, told with a different voice, third person. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't figured out a way to strand them together. And shortly after the pandemic began, when I was home all the time, I just got on track one day by starting it in first person and putting Penny on the train in the opening scene. And from then on, it went. So.
Okay. So it was about sort of, once you find that rhythm, you can just go and you can
and the voice. Yes.
Okay. So have you got a new idea in the works? Are you thinking about a new story?
I am in the same situation again, where I don't know what it is yet. I just have notes and different little bits and pieces. So, but I love the process of stewing over them and trying to figure out how they connect.
That's like a puzzle, and you don't have all the pieces yet, but the pieces are slowly appearing.
Yes. Okay,
that's interesting. So, do you think you're more of a planner than a discovery writer?
Not exactly, because even though I had those pieces for The Dog of the North
Yeah.
They were just character sketches, basically. So it was the character of Bert Lampe, the accountant, and the grandmother. But I didn't know what they were going to do or what was going to happen until I started. And I only had the vaguest sense of where the novel was going. I sensed what note I wanted it to end on and sort of the tone, but not how.
Okay, so it does sound, it's much more discovery writing then. You sort of you figure out the characters, you figure out a sort of vague direction, and then you let it just kind of take you.
Yes. I don't really like using an outline at all because that sort of deflates the pleasure for me in the discovery process. So
yeah, I have a friend of mine who has exactly the same thing. She's always been a discovery writer, and she tried to write off a plan, and she just got bored. She got very bored writing it because for her, the excitement is in discovering, even for her, like what's going to happen next in the story.
Yeah, I depend on my unconscious so much. I mean, it's like my best friend because it just knows. It seems to. It just amazes me that it can make connections that I can't consciously.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And do you have? You've been doing. You've been writing for a very, very long time now. So, yes. Do you have any like rituals or like? Do you like a specific setting or like a certain drink to accompany your writing?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little tiny office in my house that's totally full of papers and books. But I feel very comfortable in here, and I have to have my coffee, and that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's nothing too complicated. You just need your safe space and your coffee.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there was a period of time. I think one reason I was a really slow starter with my writing career, even though I was trying, was that my life was in a lot of chaos for some time. I was like working part-time as a truck driver, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't concentrate, even though, the urge was within me to write during that time. But, having a more ordinary stationary life has been good for me. So.
Right. Yes. Sort of making it part of a routine, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And outside of your writing, am I right in thinking you also work as an editor for a few different organizations?
Yes. I've been with the Chicago Quarterly Review the longest, 20 years now. And yeah, I got my editorial training at the Atlantic Monthly in Boston. I was the assistant to the fiction editor there. Then more recently in Santa Cruz, where I live, a literary magazine, a beautiful literary magazine, started 10 years ago called Catamaran, founded by Catherine Segerson, and I'm the managing editor of that. So yeah, my days are filled with usually writing in the morning and editorial work in the afternoon.
Have you always done editorial? Is that, I know you said you did some work when you were at high school, you were with the newspaper, yes. And then all throughout there, have you always kind of done that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's my alternate life is as an editor, which yes, exactly, started in high school. Actually, it started in elementary school. We had a little magazine. So, yeah.
Okay, you've really been on this you've been on this path a long time.
I know.
That's great though. Do you think, would you ever be interested in moving into editorial for like novels and long form writing?
I mean, yeah, from time to time, I help people with their work, and people send me novels to edit freelance. So I already kind of do that.
Oh, okay.
But I think, I know writers who've gone into publishing and, been editors for literary fiction and major publishers, and it's very consuming, and they end up not being able to do their own work. So.
Yes, I think it's difficult. There are people that do both.
Yeah.
But I think it is very difficult because, especially with editorial. Well, I know in the UK, it's a very full-time, perhaps more than full-time job for the editors that I've met anyway.
Yeah. Well, my editor for the Portable Veblen in the States was a writer named Ed Park, and he he had to finish a novel he was working on and left Penguin at that point, shortly after that book came out. And I understand why. It's coming out now this fall. It's called Same Bed, Different Dreams. And it's just a brilliant novel that he's been working on since then. So, I'm glad that he chose that path.
Yeah. No, I get it. And you can see why. I think it happens a lot more that people who work in publishing then start sort of doing their own writing and take a step back from their publishing life versus people who start writing and then go into publishing. I think it's more rare that way around.
Yeah. The work at the literary magazines is a little more cyclical. So there's periods of time where it's not as active as others. And so it just fits well with the writing life.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. It's great. And also great that you found a nice balance to fit it all in together.
Oh, I learned so much from it. I mean, I just love being in the thick of what people are doing right now, seeing the work of young people that comes in from grad programs and so forth. And I think it's a wonderful training too, to when you're first starting out to be reading manuscripts, because, we see things that are published all the time. We don't see the things that are sort of almost there, but not quite.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's easy to forget from the outside looking in how many drafts and how many like rewrites go into the finished products. Like they're never like first drafts that you're seeing coming out into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's good to remember that, especially for aspiring writers where it's like, oh, I don't have to write it perfectly first time over.
Right. You can see common pitfalls and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've always thought that the some of the kind of best ways to learn and also kind of see your own mistakes is to find a group of friends who are writers, and when you do critique for other people, I often found that I would see things and reading someone else's manuscript highlight something and then realize that I also did a similar thing, and then go back into my own work and be like, oh yeah, I did that and I hadn't seen it before.
Very much so. Yeah. I'm actually in 2 writing groups, so I can't get enough of that, obviously. Yeah.
That's great. But it's a very healthy way to hone your own craft, is to help other people kind of critique theirs.
Yes.
And what advice would you give to writers who are looking to get their foot in the publishing door and get their work out into the world?
Well, I would say that, it's good not to be too discouraged by rejections, because it's probably inevitable that there are going to be some, if not many. I think that if you're really sure that you've got something that has been, seen by trusted readers, you've been told it's working, it's good, there's something there, you've done as much to it as you can, then to stick with it and just not lose heart.
Yes. Perseverance.
Yeah.
It's a tricky industry. It's also a very slow industry. So you do have to just stick with it at a certain point.
Yes.
And before we get to the final question, I do just want to quickly say, I have a copy of The Dog of the North right here, and I am obsessed with the cover. It is so pretty. When it arrived, I was just like, oh my God, this is one of my favorite covers of the year.
It is. It's delightful. Yeah, I love it too.
And I've got the UK one, of course.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But they're quite similar. A lot of time you'll see a book in the UK and the US have a wildly different cover, but the energy, I think, is similar. You've still got the van and all that bits and bobs.
Exactly.
But absolutely beautiful. Let's get to the final question, which, as always, is, Elizabeth, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you take?
Oh my gosh.
What a response.
Say 2?
Oh my God.
I kind of feel like I would bring 2. But if I really can only have one, I would say Anna Karenina.
Okay.
Because I think it has everything you need to know about life in it.
Yeah.
If I somehow managed to bring 2.
If you could smuggle a second one in.
I might bring The Unconsoled by Kazuo Ishiguro.
Okay.
I feel like I could stay lost in its chambers like in an Escher painting forever. So it would distract me from my loneliness. Yeah.
Okay. So, but if you had to pick one, it would be Anna Karenina.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Great choices. Very, very thinking choices. Deep books you've gone for there. But great choices nonetheless. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming on the podcast and talking about your new book and your experiences with writing and publishing. It's been really great chatting with you and meeting you.
Oh, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me.
And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Elizabeth is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at elmckenzie1, or you can head over to her website, stopthatgirl.com. The Dog of the North, her new long-listed book, is out now. You can go and get it. It has a beautiful cover in both the US and the UK. And to make sure that you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Check out the Right and Wrong Patreon page for more from this podcast. And for more bookish chats, you can check out my other show, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Elizabeth, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.